All right, here we go. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Fourth time's the charm. It's April 16th, the year. That's right. It's 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast, and this is episode 763.
Yeah, I had to do a quick dip out of that music because we were having a problem.
Yeah, well, I mean, we nailed it on the final one, right? It sounded fantastic over here.
Yeah, but I just wanted to get it out of there quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Much as people like to dance to it.
That's right. It's people dance, people get hyped. It's a great day. Hope everyone had an awesome racing weekend. It is a busy time of year. It's good to be back here on the podcast and cover quite a few topics that we hope you can relate to and fancy. But yeah, we got Ironman Texas next weekend. You had Boston Marathon yesterday, which still is like one of those events that when I watch it, I'm still like just amazed at the speed in which these athletes run and look like they're like barely breathing. It's just like you looking like, oh, they're just out for a Sunday stroll split 5:10. It's just it's beyond me how. But it's efficiency, right? We talked about it a lot. Talked about it on one of the podcasts I think a couple weeks ago. And when you look at like that swimmer that's next to you, and they look like they're going super easy and super slow, but you look at the clock and they're just flying, or they're next to you and they're just lapping you every 200. It's just maximum efficiency. And then also I find it incredible. I mean, I know they only race for like 2 hours or 2 hours and 10 minutes, but it's also fascinating to me the limited amount of fuel that they take in during the race. That's also, I mean, I'm sure the majority of them, I mean, their run is basically they're burning mostly fat the whole time just because that's how they've trained more than likely, and they're just topping things off. But yeah, it's always one of those crazy events to watch and marvel at, honestly, that people are that fast and can run at that speed for that long and then get done and, walk on over to the podium and stand on top of it and do it repeatedly. So it's always great to
yeah, I mean that's been one of my gut instinct things for a long time is that fuel thing because of the obsessiveness of fueling. And I always think that there's something to be said for being in really good shape and being efficient. A lot of times, you probably have athletes like this. I have athlete who, I don't know, he ran his like best half marathon PR, like crushed, just super fast. And I was like, how'd you feel? And he said, I think I had a goo. I think I had
a goo. Yeah.
It's like that. Oh man, I really screwed up my fueling on that run. Nah, I don't think. I mean, like it's just like I'm a smorgasbord guy too. I'm talking about myself a lot, but I'm just saying when you're good, efficient, like there's something to be said for that.
No, I mean I think you nailed it, and this isn't the topic today, but I think it is good to touch on at least in that a lot of people like the reason for. I would say the majority of athletes DNF or like a really, really bad day in a 70.3 as a full is GI distress.
Mm-hmm.
It's not from calf cramp or, a headache or my ear is sore or I went in zone 4 too early. It's GI distress. And I do believe that. I haven't, I think way back when we first lived in Overland Park, I did, and I think this is when I wrote the blog post for us that was run slow to get fast, and I kind of chronicled my slow running for a long period of time, and I think I was doing all my runs fasted, and the best I got up to that's not the word for it, the most efficient I got up to, and it's the fastest I've ever been. It's still it was that time where I came to Nashville, ran the Tom King half. It was when I had my 5K PRs from back then, and I made it I did a 17-mile run at 740s on 2 regular size water bottles with Nuun in it.
Mm-hmm.
So no calories, no nothing, just hydrating, and just I'm not going to use the word fat adapted, but I had done it so much and so frequently that my body is first instinct is I'm just gonna pull from the massive fuel source that we have on board here, which is fat. And that's for everybody, no matter what kind of body fat percentage you have. You're always going to carry more fat calories than you are glycogen on board. And then when you think about when you don't have that or you can't have that, tap into that reserve, you open it up to. And I'm not saying you can't do it both ways, but I do think the margin of error is a lot smaller when you're having to put so much into your body, from a sugar, carbohydrate, goos and blocks and chews and beans and maltodextrin, all these things. Like the more you put in there, the more margin for error you have, right? I've never heard anybody say, yeah, I had 2 glasses of water the other day and a few almonds and it wrecked my stomach. I mean, I had diarrhea for days. No, it's always comes after like too much dairy or splurging, or you tried something to eat you shouldn't have. Like it always comes from too much, right? Yes, you can have food viruses and stuff, and but yeah, I mean, I think you just have your gut is they call it your second brain. Really, it's your first brain. A lot of people would say. And when you put that much stuff into it, and then you think about the different levels of intensity in which you race at, right? The higher the intensity, the harder it is to consume calories. Or when the conditions, right, are too cold or too hot, it also makes it harder to digest calories. It's just the wiggle room just shrinks, right? Versus an athlete, that is, can fuel themselves on what they have aboard, or simple things, right? Food from the earth, or that's not totally manufactured. So no, I mean it's probably a different topic for a different day, but it's definitely a good. I'm not even sure how we got here, but it's definitely a good topic, and definitely something that I think athletes should dedicate time to. But I think most athletes won't, because in order to do that, it takes time. Like you don't just wake up the next day and think, what I'm going to do? I'm going to do all my stuff, fasted or play with, periodization or carbohydrate restriction or low carb or no carb rides, and try to become more metabolically flexible. Because you have to go easy to start. You can't go out and hammer threshold rides and hop on Zwift and do races because you're addicted, right? Most all humans, I think, this is how we got here. most all humans, I believe, are addicted to sugar and carbohydrates in one way, shape, or form. Like that, and I think that's just like how we've become. And we talked about this last week. We talked about cereal. It's like, from a young age, it's like, you're just dumping these manufactured processed sugars and carbs into your body. And then you wonder why it's so hard to not have a sweet tooth, or why, you have these biases towards certain foods. But it takes time, right? And it takes a little bit of failure, I think, and slowing down your training to get to that point. But then once you get there, the athletes that I know that do that are incredibly efficient, and some of the coaches I know that do it are just like next level. And there's plenty of pro athletes that do it. So I think it's, there's a way out there for everybody, but I definitely think it's one exploring for everyone.
Mm. Yeah. Speaking of that cereal, I opened my, I opened my mailbox. What do they call it? Damn it. Where they put the packages. Anyway, there's
mailbox?
A box. Yeah, but storage.
Front step?
Contain box, whatever. Anyway, I opened that thing up, and there was like 4 boxes of Captain Crunch in it.
That's
Andrew.
Stack.
It was. Bitch. So what do? I'm like, well, and I just remembered why I don't eat cereal that much, because I opened that thing and I just started plowing, man. I'm like,
right.
So luckily, because I have coconut milk usually here. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm just saying that's what I have. Don't come at me. But thankfully, I ran out of that. I had to hide that box, the open box of cereal, deep in storage, and just so it's not in my face and I forget about it. But yeah, it becomes. I think it's just like it just opens a faucet, man, of a addiction or something, because I just can't stop eating cereal, man. Sometimes.
Well, I think sugar is one of the most addictive substances on the planet.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Talk about alcohol and drugs and nicotine and whatever, but I've never heard anybody say, yeah, I'm addicted to fat or I'm addicted to protein. No, people are addicted to sugar. And I think it's one of the hardest habits to break, honestly. But it's before we get into the actual topic for today, I'm skipping the intro, but for the sake of time here. But one of the biggest bullshit listings of all time is what they put a serving size is on the side of a box of cereal. Oh. They're like 12 or 13 servings, and you're like, what? 2.5 max.
Oh yeah,
max. Because who eats the cereal that they love the most out of a really small bowl? No one. Give me the largest salad. I'm kind of a reverse guy. If I'm ever going to eat cereal, give me the largest bowl you have that's made for like a huge salad, and give me that. And then I'll put in the small bowl supposed to have the cereal in it. I'll put the salad in. But yeah, nobody gets 13 to 14 servings of cereal out of a cereal box. What is that trash? What did you get?
What do you mean?
Did you finish a whole box?
No, I didn't. But it was an extra large. I mean,
of course, not in America, not extra large.
Yeah, it was like the box was the size of like my iMac screen, and I didn't get quite through it. But I've also been thinking, because I've been riding a lot, and we had the guy from Saturday app on, and a lot of people like that, and I always liked it too. It's just that when I started doing it, it just seemed like a lot. I mean, you would look at how much sugar's in it instead of like, you know what I mean? So I've been riding a lot, maybe hour and a half-ish or whatever, and just kind of not getting after it, but, just solid zone 2 stuff. And I've just been kind of putting a little bit of sugar in, a little bit of salt and like some lemon juice and just, almost compromising. And that seems to be working out pretty good for me. I agree that, sometimes when you're going to go after a longer ride and whatever, you need to kind of fuel it up a little bit more, but I'm trying to not depend on it so much. And it actually, like to your point about overdoing it, it's such an underdo, but it's kind of there that my stomach just, you can tell that my body's like, yeah, this is a lot better for me. I don't want to be like.
It doesn't have to work as much it doesn't have to work as much to digest anything. Yeah, it is. It's that's a smart way to go about it. But yeah, it is. That was a little unnerving for me as well to like, because when you buy like a regular, pre-made drink mix, you're just like, oh, I'm just putting some powder in there. But when you take your teaspoon out and you go and you put in, three tablespoons of raw sugar into your body, you're like, that kind of gives me an uneasy feeling. but then you're like, but I'm training, so whatever. And then you put it in, you do it. So yeah, it's a definite.
Well, there's something for that too. Man, it's an endless.
It's an endless. Yeah, this isn't the topic for today, but I think it is a good topic to have. And there's a lot of resources, and I think it's something for everyone to experiment with at some point. If you're not or haven't, I know that's kind of actually one of my goals post Ironman Texas is to actually focus on that, to slow myself down in training, to allow myself a better opportunity to see if I can create more metabolic flexibility in what I do. Because actually, like referencing that 17-mile run that I did, hydrated, but taking, very, very, very little, no calories, just Nuun, electrolytes, and that was it. And felt awesome. Recovered well. I was back when I was doing like 50, 60, 65-mile weeks. This is the year I did Wisconsin. So the last time I did a full. So confession time, and I told this to you, but so a week and a half ago, so on the contrast of things, a week and a half ago, we were in Nashville. I did a ride on Friday and did 4 hours, was very high in intensity, and took the next day off. And went to my sister-in-law's daughter's 1-year birthday party, had like a giant piece of cake.
Dave and Buster's?
What'd you say?
Dave and Buster's?
No, it was definitely not Dave and Buster's. They turned 1, so we weren't at Dave and Buster's. It was a small, but it was a baked on 8th cake. And theirs are incredible. If you're ever in Nashville, go to Baked on 8th, best cakes on the planet. Anyway, had a piece of cake, and I'm not going to say what serving size it was, but had a piece of cake. And had it late enough to where what I told myself was, you know what, this is fine. I don't need dinner. I got enough calories in me. So the next morning we're heading off to drive back home. And I knew there was no chance in hell I was going to drive back from Nashville to KC, which is about 8 hours with stops, and do my long run when I got home. Like, that doesn't happen. I've got some methods to do that, and I think they're superheroes, but that's not me. I'm not that person. I'm Clark Kent. I am not Superman. So I set my alarm early, 4 o'clock, and I had a 2-hour run on the block. And then I realized that I had packed everything. Because I'm which I know doesn't come as a surprise to you, but I'm a pre-packer. Like the car was loaded, bottles were loaded. All I had was like my go bag left. And it was all in the back of my truck and like locked away. And I wasn't going to like go out there fumbling in at 4:00 in the morning. I was already kind of crunched for time. So my water bottles were up. My applesauce was up. I had some gels in there I was going to take before. It was all gone. So I went out and I made a mistake. And I did my 2-hour run. Well, to give me like one slight get out of jail free card, I did anticipate the water fountain being on at the park to give myself a little bit of a reprieve. But went out for a 2-hour run, got to the park, did a few laps around their little park track, and then went to, quench my thirst after an hour at the water fountain, and it was spitting air. Nothing. No water. So half of me saying, and this is a good lesson because we talk about not having to learn these lessons. And I got my first inclination was, you know what? Just head on back home. Right? I could have got home in 20 minutes. Hour and 20. That's probably not going to do me too much harm. I can make that fine. And then, but that's not what I decided. I decided I'm going to finish my 2 hours. So did a few more laps and then headed back. And then the last like 20 miles were just in 20 miles. The last 20 minutes running down Belmont was just not ideal. And I watched my pace drop from like 8:15 to I think it ended up like 8:30. It was not good. I was in a bad place. And then I kept telling myself, but it's fine. Like you're in this bad place. And you know what? Texas, it's going to be a bad place the whole time. So this is just fantastic practice. And then I got back, had a breakfast, got in the car, drove home again. Not ideal. I don't think I've been that sore and that out of it for 4 days. And I don't know when I can remember. And it wasn't the run or the travel that did me in. It was just the fact that how dehydrated I was and that I prepped with all this bullshit the day before. Yes, we all make mistakes, myself included. That's why you guys listen to the podcast, because you can feel kind of at home because we make mistakes, you make mistakes, and we talk about them. But I swear that run wrecked me for almost all of last week. I finally was able to have a good ride on Thursday, but the first few days of last week, again, not from the load, and we talk a lot about recovery and nutrition and how to take care of yourself, and obviously a drive home isn't ideal. And you can listen. I think that's when we make the most mistakes in training are like those final 2 to 3 weeks. You're either panic training or you're trying to, do too much or you're actually maybe doing too little. You make most of your mistakes in training the 2 or 3 weeks before your big race. And that was a giant mistake for me because even though I was starting to get some decent, like my recovery was fine, but I think I mentioned this to you in the podcast or before we went live one day, where you exclaimed, "I don't even do that," and that was like, yes, you don't go for 2 hour runs without water, but it was definitely a mistake. But what I also saw was like some signs of overtraining. And more so under recovering because my heart rate was low and my power was decent, but I couldn't get my heart rate to go up. And a lot of people see that as like fool's gold. They think, oh, I'm getting super fit, right? I'm getting really, really fit because my heart rate's low, my power's okay. But if you can't move your power like up to a certain level, like above your threshold or above it, then it means you're actually overtraining and your heart rate isn't getting high enough for a reason. And I saw all those signs last week, so I had to taper things down. Had a good ride Saturday, had a good ride Thursday or Friday, whatever day it was. I don't fucking know anymore.
Are you sure you recovered, dude?
I don't know that I'm recovered, man. And then went and had a huge swim on Saturday, and then had I would call a mediocre day on ride on Saturday. I was going for 4 hours again, only made it 2.5, and my legs were the same place. So I did what I should have done probably last week, was take an active recovery day on Monday, and then got in the pool today and swam, and we'll see how my bikes feel later today. But it is interesting. It's not interesting because it's happening to me, but, and I say this all the time to the athletes I work with, how one workout can put you behind an 8 ball. And if I had to cut that a little bit short, that definitely would have benefited me a lot greater. But going back to what we're talking about with the food thing is I could tell after an hour that run, like, my body is currently not craving sugar or gels or carbs, but it is definitely on the side of you're not nearly as efficient as you probably could be to go these long distances. And yes, you need water, right? You can't just go without water. You have to stay hydrated. That was part of it. But I could also tell, like, I think every athlete has these warning signs when they're bonking or when their blood sugar is getting low and insulin is going up and down. And I think I had that after like an hour. And I was like, I remember telling myself, I was like, damn it, you are like really not, your body's like jonesing. It's like expecting a hit of sugar or a gel or a carb. And again, like it's bonking, right? And but it's also something that you train your body to do, right? And so when you said something earlier when we were talking about, I really messed up my fueling. A lot of times it's not so much we messed up our fueling, it's that we messed up our training leading up to the day that fueling mattered the most, and that we're not very flexible. And again, going back to like a small margin for error, is my room for error on that run was very, 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 very small. And that I could just kind of feel my body. Again, was a bonk. It was like, it honestly, like when you have, and I think a lot of athletes have felt this, maybe not to the extent that like other like addicts feel it, but when they're detoxing and they're like jonesing for a hit, or they want alcohol really bad, or whatever their choice is, you get this feeling in your body like you're missing something. I think athletes get that with sugar and carbs or caffeine, because I think they're all super addicting and you can have withdrawals from it. Is that I could tell my body was like going into like withdrawal mode of like, oh my God, like you need sugar. And what had I just had the day before, giant big ass piece of cake with massive amounts of sugar. So I gave like my body, because I don't eat like that a lot anymore. And so, but I did, and it was like, it's not the same, but it's been like, it'd be like me going out and having 2 glasses of vodka, and relapsing the next day. I'm not going to want to be sober again. My body's gonna be like, hey, remember that yesterday? It was amazing. Let's do it again. And then you're back fine. So I do think your body responds that way. And I think there are kind of telltale signs with ourselves. If we can tell that our body is again trending on that line of we crave more sugar and more carbohydrates, carbohydrate rich type foods or drinks, than having like a very efficient body and metabolic profile, which obviously for long course racing is really, really important.
Well, it sounds like you learned something, obviously, and I find that fascinating because I think we have a tendency to try to keep it up. Like, right, let's say you got a power number or whatever you're trying to hit for the race, and you start feeling like that, and it's like, oh shit, I need to start adding to the mix. But like you said, it's almost like your body kind of gets a little out of control with these signals or something. And to me, I've always been fascinated by this idea of kind of on the fly recovery on stuff like that. And that's what I think I've noticed. Like even something similar happened to me the other day I was out riding a fat tire bike, and it was kind of intense, and I just don't have a water cage on there. And I got to a point where I was just dying of thirst. I like had that. I didn't, I was way under whatever. And it's just like that dry mouth and the whole thing. And I had quite a ways to go. And I'm like, I think I could plow through this, but I sort of just jumped off the trails and just kind of started chilling on the road a little bit. And it sort of settled it down, if that makes sense. And I wonder sometimes if rather than, trying to pour gas on the fire, if we just kind of step away from it a little bit and kind of let our body settle down and calm down, and then slowly get back into, drinking a little bit more, a little bit more fuel here and there, rather than just always like, eating one cake and then having another piece on top of it, the whole day. I sometimes wonder if that is like a crazy signal confusion going on in your body, and it's like more, and then really you just need to slow down a little bit for a minute and just kind of regroup and just let things settle back into a kind of an equilibrium. I don't know. It's just something I think about and kind of think I buy into. And I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever done that really. I mean, I do try to do it a little, but it's so hard to kind of step off the pedal when you're trying to get a, certain score, but it's like kind of that idea of, and I've talked about it before, where on the Ironman marathon, I've always said to myself, because I end up, rarely in the last several years. I used to run the whole thing mostly, except for aid stations, but occasionally over the last 3 or 4 of these, I've always resorted to walk run at the end. And I've talked to myself beforehand about, do you have what it takes to maybe kind of walk run a little at the beginning and let some time burn there and hope that it comes around and you kind of level out and maybe can finish a little bit better. But I don't have, you know what I mean? It just takes so much to step off that pedal, because you get off that bike and you're like, well, you've been running, you feel pretty good the first 3 or 4 miles. And then it's just sort of like hits the fan at mile 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that.
Yep.
So I just wonder if it's like if you look at that as sort of a governor in a way, if you start really getting these cravings or something like that.
Well, I mean, and I think too, I think a lot of athletes do this. Obviously I've done it. Is when we, you and I talk a ton about both on and off the air, but just kind of staying in the middle, not getting too far in one way or the other. Nothing's too great. Nothing's too terrible. I'm not perfectly trained. I'm not undertrained. You don't have to go so easy and so slow. At the same time, you also don't want to go burn your biscuits, right? Every single time too, and stay even. And that's boring to people, right? Because I do think, speaking of sugar, we crave these, we crave our uppers and our downers, right? Because it gives us an extra sense of something, right? And I do think we seek that, even like consciously and unconsciously, whether it's through food or drink or relationships or through training. I think we all tend to, or not all, most humans, right, and athletes struggle with the with the mundane, right? With the lack of, man, that was incredible, or man, that was terrible. Because if it's incredible, it gives you these a euphoric sensation and a dopamine hit of, man, this is all great. I'm next level. Gives you something else to focus on. Well, the same can go for if something goes poorly, right? You still have these flooding emotions and feelings and a physical response, but they're just different. But it's still a feeling. And I think one of the areas that we get trapped in as athletes is that we either try to, and I was totally guilty of this on the ride that I did, is I hopped out, and I think every athlete knows this feeling. I hopped out on the trace. I had that shitty ride on that Wednesday that I talked about, which was rainy and hailing and cold. I was supposed to go to the lab and to ride in aero the whole time. I was like, I want to go back to the trace. I just don't want to go to the lab. I want to go to the trace. I want to get back out there. And after 2 pedal strokes, I knew that I had it. And then we all had those days. Like I took 2 pedal strokes and I was like, I bet you right now I'm pushing really good power. And I wasn't going to look. I was just tracking her, but I was really, really good power. And then rode again. It wasn't even my plan. My plan was to just ride like mostly zone 2 endurance with a little bit of race pace stuff in there. And after 2.5 hours, I came back to the car, refueled, and made like a giant mistake. I took a peek at my Garmin and was like, I wonder what kind of watts I'm holding right now. 20 was like 199 average power, 208 normalized power. And the first thought that popped in my head was, let's see if you can go 4 with a normalized power over 2. And that was the biggest mistake, because I did it, but the last 20 minutes were really, really hard. So, but I found myself thinking again, like going back to decision making and seeking different things and like getting a response. Because I'll readily admit that one of my biggest not a focus, but some of my biggest mistakes in this training block for Texas have come up and happened because I've wondered and questioned myself, can I dig as deep as I used to dig? Can I dig back? And I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, and can I dig in the pain cave enough the way I used to back when I drank? Because back then it was every day. Like it was my normal baseline. And since then I have questioned if I can actually go that deep anymore, because back then I would just do it because it was a relief. It was a stimulus. It was a pain, but it was a feeling. And then now that life has gotten better, like I can be like, fuck it, I don't need that. Like I'm out here for like my choice. The rest of my life is great. Like, why am I even doing this right now? And so I've found myself like in kind of those dark times, challenging, even like, we're talking about that ride in the rain. I was like, no, you're trying to prove to yourself again that you can do to me, it's not doing hard things, is that you can be in your mind and know that you can quit and you have that option and you know that it's painful, but you're choosing to keep going. And I think I felt that way, and I kind of rationalized that part of my run that I just talked about in the last 30 minutes. Well, it's going to feel like this on race day. You got to show yourself you can still do it. Same thing with that ride. The last hour of that ride, I rolled right back past my water stop with 45 minutes to go and headed back out on like that, on the other way on the trace where it's like rolling but windy, and did my time out and my time back, and came and just chasing a power number because I was happy that I was there, even though it's not even close to a hold on race day. But it's still, when I got to those moments of like weakness or wanting to quit, I was like, yeah, but you're going to have this feeling on race day. Are you going to quit or are you going to keep going? And I do think those internal conversations have to happen with athletes. But what I don't think is that they have to come at the sacrifice of your training. And I do think that those 2 sessions were ones where you're getting so close to game time, it's be like, going to getting a workout in before, the biggest game of the year, because a little bit extra is help. And I got to go through pain to get there. And then you don't have the legs at your jump shot to win the game. It's about trusting that you are where you are, but also reining things back in when you need to and regulating, you're feeling really great and you need to overcome these mental barriers, these questions you have in your mind. How are you framing things? And not dig yourself a hole, but continue to move forward. Because again, I think everything we do comes with a sacrifice, right? You can have a great training day and put down, numbers, your best numbers of the year, but then how long does it take you to recover? Right. And I think when it comes to like, sugar or, things like that, we know, we know the drawbacks of all things in life, right? There's nothing that hasn't been studied or researched or, cigarettes are bad, people smoke. Drinking isn't super ideal, people drink. Sugar is addicting, is bad for all kinds of things. It's in basically everything that we eat. There's exercise is great for you. Most people don't. Like, so nothing is like unresearched and new, but we still, I think as humans, like we whether we subconsciously want it or not. And sometimes I think we can actually do like these sessions or workouts or do things in our life that put us in a bad position. And you're not even really sure why you did it, but it's that swing. And now that I kind of like talking through it, I remember back, in some of our earlier podcasts, I talked about one of the comments my sponsor told me. And he said, most addicts don't relapse when things are really, really terrible, because they're really, really on their game. They're practicing meditation, they're working their steps, they're reading the big book, they're going to meetings. They relapse on like a random Wednesday when they're not thinking about anything because life is good. And they're kind of not on their toes. And then they've become so accustomed to things being chaotic that they're uncomfortable with things that are stable. And that's kind of what I mean when we chasing these big workouts and get failures. When we have these failures, it still gives you, I think, not a dopamine hit, but it still gives you like this mental and emotional release where you can be disappointed in yourself and then spend time trying to figure out how you're going to fix it. Whereas you go out and you nail a 4-hour easy endurance ride, the success, quote unquote, and the satisfaction lasts for about a minute. I feel pretty good when I got off. I'm not going to go eat a bunch of crap because I don't need to, because I didn't overextend myself. I'm not going to have bad cravings. I'm going to sleep great. That was fine. Whoa. Where is the excitement in that? And I think the pendulum swings both ways on excitement, but also like that panicky feeling And I think that you really see that turn up the closer you get. And when I mean turn up, I mean the volume gets higher on both ends of those spectrums, where we really are super sensitive to, are things really, really great, or are things really, really terrible? Because the closer you get to race day, you're expecting one or the other. I mean, I'm feeling great, I'm ready to race. Maybe I'm peaking too early, or I'm feeling too terrible. Maybe I'm too fatigued, but that means I'm doing a lot of training. And the fact is that it should probably just kind of, it'd be a little bit of a blip here and there, but you're not burning bad matches. You're not burning good matches. And I'm not sure if any of that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. I think about it in terms of, you talk about seeking that high or whatever, and it's really interesting to think about seeking that high kind of in a moderate sort of way, like really getting excited about the idea that you're out there in an aerobic state, burning fat, and like really efficient with that. We talk about this idea of you only have a couple biscuits to burn in a year, with races or whatever, about really laying it out there. And when I think about what you're talking about at the trace and getting out there and kind of being on the edge of it, it's almost like, are you burning biscuits, or is the flame just getting a little too hot? It's how I talk about in 70.3s is you really don't want to burn them too hard, but you definitely want to toast them. And I think that that's an interesting thing, because maybe you can have like 10 toasty days, you know what I mean? Like if you would have went out and done that ride on the trace and then ran a marathon, you probably would have really burned them. You know what I mean? So like you're kind of just really warming them up and getting them kind of primed. I mean, a lot of people put toast in the toaster and it comes out like white, like some of the toasters don't even,
Yeah, it's warm soft bread.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think those types of analogies are very interesting, because I think you have to push yourself in that regard, because you're going to face it in the race usually. Most people do. And I mean, I've seen a lot of people kind of, with Wisconsin, for example, I'm trying to ride hills, I'm doing big gear. And then they get out there and they're absolutely screwed, because they'll hit that course and just be like, their brain has never been near that. You know what I mean? Or any really hilly course or whatever. So I think you have to experience that. Yeah, I've talked about this many times, but I think the thing that might have prepared me most for being able to go through these things in Ironman is when I used to play softball, and we'd play like 7 games in a day on a Sunday or something. And just that fact of getting off that bench and running back out the shortstop every inning. I mean, I was cooked after, 4 games or whatever. And then I had to play 3 more or whatever. I always was the guy that would run out to the position. So I'd have to like close my eyes and go, okay, 1 more. Let's just go back out there. But that process is like you're saying, when you get out there and you're in a spot, most of the time we have the ability to do it. I just think we have to train our brains to dig deeper. And it sounds to me like that's what you're doing, kind of just looking for that ability to connect the dots in your brain a little bit. It's like, this hurts. I mean, cycling, especially something like a 4 or 5 hour ride, how many highs and lows are out there? It's pretty remarkable sometimes to me. Sometimes I can, at hour 4, I can just feel like $1,000,000, and then 10 minutes later, I can feel like I need to sleep for 4 days. It's up and down. But I think that's part of the process, is being able to sort of, I like to think about it as calming the brain down and kind of regrouping a little bit. And then, we talk about like pool breaks that mystify me. You can be just totally gassed when you're done with 100 or 200. And then like 7 seconds later, I feel okay. So
it is,
but it's like that kind of shit,
odd.
Man.
Yeah.
On the fly, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's so true, and I think one of the things that we all have to think about, and I think it's one of the hardest things to disconnect is working through those things in your mind, but also ensuring that your body is able to cash the check whatever the check your mind is writing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, and we see athletes that do this all the time. I've done it before. Some athletes are like, when they have a really bad day or they're stressed or going through really hard life moments, they just can't work out. They got nothing. And then some athletes, when they're going through really, really hard times, put out their best workouts because it's the one thing that's giving them like a relief, and they can just throw it down. And mentally, I think, and that's the thing, right? Is that whatever you're needing mentally and emotionally, to you, that's all you're really thinking about. It totally overrides your body, which is, again, like it goes back to the joke we always talk about when you go watch 70.3s or Ironman races and you see people walking for, miles and miles and miles. But that last half mile, baby, they got it. If they really want to run, they're going to run. And it's because it's mental, right? And so I think, like, again, like our first, the thing we give into, or the first thing we're trying to appease is our mind. Like, what signal are we getting? Is this hurt or does this feel good? But what we have to remember too is that, is our body going to be capable of responding in a positive way the next day? And so I think you can learn a lot, right? One, of how much you can actually push your body and ask, and then also how your body responds, but also not to dig yourself a hole, because you did. What happens when people dig a hole, like I dug over those few days, was, you were trying to accomplish something with that you wanted out of your mind or out of your emotion, not something you really wanted out of your body. That was the secondary, or even lower than that goal. It was just, let me see how hard I can push. You're not really looking for yes, you might rationalize with seeing a pace on your watch, or a pace in the pool, or watts on your bike. But what you're really rationalizing is a mental and emotional need for validation, or in some way, shape, or form, either that you are fit enough, or that you are strong enough, or that you are tough enough, or that you can overcome things better than you can in the past. What you're trying to do and satisfy is a mental and emotional need, not a physical need. But when you do those things, and your body is the one that has to answer for it, right? You get off your bike, or you get done running or swimming, and you go back about your day, and you're coherent, and your mind can do all the things that it wants to do. It can work, it can have conversations, it can think about responsibilities, all the things your mind does a million times over. But your body is kind of left like picking up the pieces. And then, but what happens is the more you leave your body to pick up the pieces, the more opportunity you have for your mind to be less sharp as the days and days and days go beyond that. And then when you go to ask your body to do something, it's going to tell you no. And I think to me, that's when we talk about burning matches over the course of the year. It's also a mental and emotional ask, right? You can't dig deep every weekend. You can't ask. And I hear age group athletes talk about this. I hear professional athletes talk about this, and they talk about, I just didn't have it today mentally to go where I needed to go. It's a mental thing, and you can't mentally flog yourself over and over and over again, and then expect to just have it on race day and not be. It's kind of like touching a hot stove over and over and over again. Eventually you learn the lesson. You don't want to do it again, and that's the same thing, right? You do, I think, and it's funny. We've talked through it this way because we talk about burning our matches physically. It's probably also the same mentally and emotionally. You can only burn your matches mentally and emotionally a few times over the course of the year in workouts, even, because then you're going to go out for a race day, you're going to go out for a training session, you're going to want to do something. Your body's like, I know how that felt mentally and physically, and I'm not game today. I would rather not. Mm-hmm. And you're left kind of sitting there wondering, like, man, I just didn't have it today. I wonder why. And then if you go back and look at your training log or your comments or conversations, you're like, that's why. Let's say you have a great work week Monday through Thursday. You're probably fine going to work on Friday. Let's finish the week off with a bang. Things are fantastic. I don't mind going to work today. I love my job. Versus having like Monday through Thursday just having total shit days. You're calling out sick. You don't want to go. And even a good day that you could have had will be welcomed and geared towards a crappy day because it's what you expect and you don't want to. So you're kind of hesitant to even make it a good day because they've all been bad before that. And your body and your mind remember everything, and they're brilliant machines and the smartest supercomputer on the planet. In our brain is like it remembers all things. And so if you continue to push it, it'll remember both of those. So yeah, I do think it's important to do both. And obviously, if you can do them side by side, I think that's probably ideal, since you're, to go back and do it again. And then that's been my kind of like self reminder this last week to, whatever race days, whatever 10 days away, or 11, whatever it is to this week, is to not worry about hard workouts, to not worried about gaining fitness, but to focus on workouts that feel good. Because my recent memory is of 2 or 3 workouts that only one workout that felt really good, and some other workouts that did not feel great. So now my goal this week specifically is on my long ride and my long runs and swims is to feel good when I get out, to feel refreshed most of the time. Mostly, I'm not talking about refreshed like that was a breeze, but to be satisfied mentally and physically, and feel like I can go back out the next day and do something. And I did that today in the pool. I got in, I swam 3,500. I looked at my watch and it said 3,550. And my first thought was, just go and do the 4,000. Just swim it straight, 4,000 straight. It's super. But then I was like, man, you are so hot. What's 500 more yards going to do? You can swim it, but it's so hot right now. Just cap it. And I did. It's funny. And then you talk about the swimming. So I stopped, versus maybe last week or the week before, I would have kept going and then dug myself a hole. And it's funny what you said about like how quickly you can like get yourself back. Like I stopped for less than a minute, took a sip of water, and swear to God, I feel like a brand new person. I mean, you swim whatever it was, like 50 minutes straight. And I was like, I stopped for and I was like, man, it's so hot. You got to stop. Stop for legit a minute. Take my goggles, put them on top of my head, have a sip of water. And I was like, actually, I feel pretty good. Versus, and I had kept going, I don't know that I would have had that. I think I would have dug a little bit too deep, considering how warm it was in the pool this morning. But so that was a lesson. And then again, that's kind of my focus for the rest of the week, is to allow yourself to do this and feel good, because I think you do need to, we talk about building fitness, and a lot of people talk about building confidence and where that comes from. This week, if you're preparing for a race or you have races coming up, confidence doesn't mean crushing yourself. Like, I gained some confidence for sure with that 4-hour ride, but it definitely came at a cost. Same with that run. I gained some confidence, but it came at a cost of honestly probably gaining a little bit extra fitness the next week. So now the goal for myself is to gain confidence in how quickly I'm recovering and how good I feel when I'm done with the workout, and not choosing to go that extra gear, and kind of, every moment I decide not to go the extra gear, I'm kind of putting it to the side and putting it in a bag. And then on race day, I can just kind of undo that bag, put them on my pocket, because I'm going to need every single one of them. And so you definitely don't, especially the closer you get to race day, you don't want to be digging those holes or going, to your reserve mentally. You want to leave sessions feeling good, because it's about that confidence, about feeling easy. It's about feeling efficient. It's about feeling like you got endurance. It's not about, getting off the bike or out of the pool or done with the run, wondering, I wonder how I'm going to recover from this. You should be feeling positive and like, I don't have to worry about how I recover this, because it's going to feel good no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like I can talk my body into almost anything, as long as I don't force it too hard. So, like going out for a long ride on a Saturday and I'm not feeling it, but I'm just like, hey, let's just go for a ride. And then once you get warmed up, I was thinking about how, sometimes you may get off the bike. If I get off the bike at Wisconsin or something, my heart rate's like 120 or something, let's just say. And, and I can probably run at 160 pretty comfortably, but I don't want to go from 120 to 160 like now. You know what I mean? Because that's when the body starts getting all weird. I've noticed that up here. Sometimes when I'm running with these like snowshoe things on, and in the snow, it's like you get out there and you start, and I was just immediately, my brain and body were thrown into a frenzy because my heart rate just jacked, and then I couldn't get it down, and I had that hypoglycemic thing going on and all that kind of stuff. And I just think there's so much magic in, just kind of coaxing yourself along a little bit rather than just forcing it to the top. I mean, unless you're really, we're doing long days, and the slower you kind of raise that peak, the better off you are. I mean, I think about, we ever go to like back when you go to concerts or something, right? They always have a warm-up band. And I never really thought about it until now, but they kind of just get you, they're not jacked up on the volume or whatever, and you're just kind of like listening. It's like all pleasant. And then the main act comes out and they're just cranked at 11. It's like but if you went into the arena and all of a sudden it was at 11, it'd be probably unlistenable. But you have to kind of let your ears and everything tune up to it. So I don't know. That's the way I look at approaching a long day. It's sort of like, just take it a step at a time in the beginning and not try to finish. That's why I saw about, you can't try to finish the Ironman in the swim. You know what I mean? It's just got to be part of the day that you're letting come to you. And, same with just jumping on the bike and putting the hammer down. It's like you got to let that happen, naturally. And I think your body will go a lot further for you if you're just sort of a little bit nicer. It's like, come on, let's just go a little bit further. And usually you can find that.
But again, like this is why it's so challenging, right? Is balancing, because you really are. I think, and every athlete does this. And as a coach, like I was actually kind of laughing the other day. I was popped on social media and saw a coach with a screenshot of their Training Peaks calendar and working. And I was like, man, that is exactly what I thought coaching was too when I started. And then I realized that that's about 10% of what we do as coaches. Because writing the training prescription is, without fail, the easiest thing to do as a coach. But when you talk about all the things we just talked about, and you talk about each athlete's mental, emotional, and physical needs. Physical is in what they need as an athlete, like where they are on their athlete life cycle, their athlete age, the age of the person, what they're training for, short, long, do they have run races, all those things. Like, yeah, I mean, it sounds complicated, but for an experienced coach, it's not that hard. But the emotional and mental needs of the athlete is what takes up 90% of a coach's time. And I don't mean like having 45-minute conversations. I mean having conversations like with yourself as a coach, and when you're reading through their comments and what they need is what is life like and what do things mean to them? Do they need to dig deeper? They don't need to dig deeper. What are they feeling emotionally? What do they need mentally? And it's like you're balancing 3 different people in the course of a week. And it's the stress and it's the emotions and the highs and how do they respond? Do they respond well? Do they respond poorly? Do they need a hard workout? Do they not need a hard workout? And you have to, and again, it's still on that end. It's like you do your best to make that good decision, but that's the really challenging part, is getting it right, because there's every athlete's like a 3-headed monster. You got how they feel physically, how they feel emotionally, and how they feel mentally, and that changes on a dime. And the thing about it is that how they adapt physically happens the slowest, right? You don't become a gold medalist overnight. It takes decades. You started a long time ago, right? You don't get better. Any coach ever that's not trying to sell you snake oil will tell you that getting better in endurance sports takes time, not months, but years. And so that takes time. But the emotional and mental swings or needs or desires or attention spans, right? Good, bad, indifferent, whatever, of an athlete can change during the course of a day. I mean, I've got plenty of athletes who you can see, like you converse with a totally different person over the course of a week. And I've got some athletes who will, like I had one yesterday, who wrote 4 different comments under their workout, and the last one said, "Please disregard everything I just said." Like, that's a perfect example of most athletes. Sometimes they need reassurance. Sometimes they need to be pushed. Sometimes they need to be reined in. Sometimes they need, a hug. Sometimes they need a slap on the back. It's because we all need different things at different days, different parts of our life, and different parts of the week even. But all of those things affect how we perform. Period. Your ability to perform has so much more to do with where you sit and how you stand emotionally and mentally from the chin up than where you are physically. And because you can feel, on point physically, but if you're mentally down, like you're not doing anything. Athletes, I'm sorry, I'm not motivated today. I've got so much stuff going on. I'm distressed. This. You're like, dude, I wouldn't be motivated. In order to be motivated, you have to have energy. Period. And again, going back to doing too much mentally, emotionally, or physically, you do too much physically, you have low energy. You have low energy, you have less motivation, less level, a lack of commitment. And same things if you're like a really hard stress, mental and emotional day, a lot less likely to do more, want to do more because you've already used that up. And that's the most complex piece. And so I think when you're trying to sort yourself out either as a self-coached athlete or a coached athlete or a person, just trying to figure it all out, it's a hard thing to balance, which is why it's so important to have a person that's totally objective, like a coach or like an advisor or whoever, to kind of slap you out of your funk, or to give you a few words when you need to get a few words, or to most of them tell you dude, just chill the fuck out. This is all fine. This is good. You're perfectly okay. Everything is good. Oh, okay. Thank you. Because when you don't, you're left to your own devices, you're a lot more likely to make really poor decisions, because your decisions are oftentimes not based on where you are physically, right? They're based on what you're needing that day mentally and emotionally. I need a good workout. Bad time to work out, because you're expecting your run or your ride or your swim to solve your problems or to make you feel better, but your body might not be on board with that. Your body never wakes up. It's like, hey, dude, Mike, I really need a 45-minute run today to feel good. So I always kind of joke with my athletes, like, yeah, my legs just wanted it today. The fuck they did? No, they didn't. You did. You wanted to run your ass off today. You wanted to go hard because you needed something. You need something. Doesn't make it wrong, but you needed something. Your legs didn't grow eyes and look up at you the morning like, hey, Mike, I need to run fast today. It doesn't happen. You had a bad day. You had a good day. You're lacking confidence in your fitness. You wanted to run hard and see if it was there. Those are all the different things. Again, it's not one roller coaster. It's 3 different roller coasters intertwined. That is the athlete. You look at those crazy looking roller coasters they have at these theme parks that go up, down, and around sideways, and they look like there is no straight line. Take 2 of those, time with 2 other ones, and that's what it looks like when you coach athletes. Most athletes, because that's all the different emotions and feelings. Because remember, it's not the fitness that drives the decision making; it's the person that drives the decision making.
Exactly.
It looks like it's 3 roller coasters strapped together.
Yep.
And that's it for today. That's all I got. I got to have a nice low key day and an easy ride later. Hopefully, got something out of it. That wasn't probably our most structured podcast, but you know what? That's fine. They're not really that structured anyway. Just two lads talking in a coffee shop. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. If you're going to be down at Ironman Texas next week, find us both. We'll both be there. Mike will be down there spectating. I'll be down there racing, which is a huge change in assignment for how it's been the past 7 years. And so come down there and find us. I'm sure it's going to be a great weekend. And it's always a great town. They're a fantastic host city. So come find us and say hi. Also, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me specifically, I'm at Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. Well, go enjoy your training day.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll see you Thursday, man.
All right, see you.